Welcome back to G Brands. I'm Andy Rowe, and as usual, I'm joined by Justin Marshall and Jeremy Paul. And this week, we not only have a World Cup winner, we have a man who scored a try in the 1999 decider. It is the big O, Owen Finegan. How are you, mate?
Very well, very well. It's difficult when you talk about these things because it was so long ago. I'm watching the Wallabies, hoping they win a World Cup and get rid of that mantle, or win a Bledisloe and get rid of the mantle of winning the last one. But it's been a good journey since, and I've sort of loved that I'm still involved in rugby in different ways and forms, and being part of sort of watching the new generation play and get better and better.
Mate, you sidestepped that 99 World Cup final try. Like, it was...
I didn't sidestep.
Mate, it was one of the best tries of all time in a World Cup final. Set up by myself with a great throw.
Yeah, it was
to the back.
one of the first ones that went straight.
JP, let's just see what he remembers of it before you take all the story.
What I first remember was JP replaced Michael Foley right at that point, and Andrew Blades actually, I think it was, Andrew Blades said recall. He didn't want JP thrown to the tail
to the back
on his first line-out throw.
Yeah.
We'd done a bit of video review, and we sort of picked that Olivia Magnier was going to be racing off at Stephen Larkham at 5'8", and knew that backspace was a good area to attack. And obviously myself and George Gregan and had that little flick pass down pat, and it was easy. But what I used to love was when I did that, normally I only had to run 3 or 4 meters. This one was like a 25-meter run.
40, mate. It was 40.
So I kept looking around for someone else to give it to. I was like, where are the wingers? But like always, they were out checking out who was on the sidelines and what bay the best looking girls were in. But it's not really a hard game, is it? Just run hard, tackle hard, score tries. So come on and to be part of that, and
it's pretty memorable.
Yeah, but because it's sort of, I had a family barbecue at my place before we went away, and I told 50-odd people in that room that I had a dream that I scored a try in the World Cup final. So,
yes.
Sort of 10 or 15 minutes before I'd got a couple of touches and passed the last ball to Ben Tune, and I was thinking maybe that's what I saw. And then, it was sort of closer to injury time where I scored my try, but it was just great to, when you look at the culmination of a team and a group, 4 years before we were atrocious. I started in 1996 with the Wallabies. We were known as the woeful Wallabies. We got smacked at Wellington. We decided not to watch the Haka. We got pumped in South Africa, lost our coach with Greg Smith. Rod McQueen came in, Steve Nance as a trainer, John Muggleton, coaching us, with rugby league defence, and it was a good crew. We had Tim Lane and Jeff Miller, so 2 ex-Wallabies, one in the forwards, one in the back. So a really good off-the-field crew, and our on-the-field crew became really good too. Like when you look at the names that you played with, it's when people say to me, "Oh, did you play for the Wallabies?" and then they say, "What era were you with?" and you can talk about Phil Kearns and Jeremy Paul and John Eales and David Giffen and Todd Ikefu, George Smith. So that's the forward pack. And then you look at Gregan and Larkham and Daniel Herbert at that time, Jason Little, Tim Hoare, and earlier in that Campese, but Joe Roff, Matt Burke. It's like it was a pretty good era of rugby, and we had some good results, but there were bad times too leading up into that 1999 Rugby World Cup where we weren't in the good books, and it then became a sort of little mini golden era for the Wallabies.
That 96 you're talking about?
Yeah.
When you didn't watch the Haka?
Yeah.
There's Athletic Park.
Yeah.
What was it? Who made that? Was that Campo? Someone told me it was Campo.
No, it wasn't Campo, because when you watch it, Campo was the only one who watched it. We were off doing catch pass drills. Campo stood by the post and was swinging his leg, pretty much saying to all the All Black supporters, "I'm watching, it's those blokes." He was watching it, and I think the documentary's been, but John Eales was a new captain. I think Greg Smith at the time was sort of leading the charge on whether that should be. And there's been lots of controversy about the All Blacks and the advantage they get with that. And when Rod McQueen came out, that's when we, the middle of summer in Brisbane, we'd start running out with tracksuits on just to slow down the psych up, and the advantage that we thought you guys got. But it was, I think it was led by that team, and then the senior players. The first I knew it was like team meeting, jumping on the bus to go
the
to
game.
the game, and they said, "Oh, we're actually not going to watch the Haka when that's on."
Mm.
And for me, like that was my first test against the All Blacks. You grow up watching. My kids do watch the Haka, and then sometimes now they don't even watch the rugby. They run off. They watch the Haka, and I grew up wanting to play for the Wallabies and wanting to watch the Haka and try and look across at
Fearsome Andrew Mertens.
Yeah, no, not so much. I know that's a joke, Mertz and you, like staring at you, but you want to look at your opposite man and be nice and close. And and they were the years where you didn't have to stay 20 metres apart. You could get a bit closer to the action. So it was disappointing, and then obviously the result spoke for itself. The team built from there, and I got to, unfortunately enough, to watch a few more Hakas closer together, and we had a really good rivalry in that time. So
let's wind the clock back a little bit, and we don't have to go back far because you burst on the scene and got to that point quite quickly. But you started your career at Randwick Rugby Club, and this pops up all the time. Like, there's so many Wallabies have come through that club.
Yeah, I think my first grade debut for the Wallabies, for Randwick, I was there was only two non-test players. It was myself and Michael Checker. And Checker had played a whole lot of games. Like, you had the front row was Phil Kearns, Ewan McKenzie, Tony Daly, Warwick War. You had the Poitavins, you had Brad Burke, Lloyd Walker, Darren Janee, Tim Kelleher, Akira Nakila was playing for Fiji at the time, David Campese. So literally it was a team of, Jorgo was there in the early years and sort of had burst onto the scene of the Wallabies. And so it was that sort of, early days. I had a couple of years playing around with Colts and had as a 18 and 19-year-old, no aspirations to be a Wallaby, but then went down there, and that style of rugby and, being in the under-21s program at that stage meant that you went to the AIS and actually learnt what a diet was and how you're supposed to train and look after yourself. So that was pretty early that I learned, but it took me a long time to get it right. So, but it was a really good breeding ground and like a fantastic style of rugby. And you look at the blokes that that are now coach the Wallabies, Ewan McKenzie, Eddie Jones, Michael Checker. I was in around all those blokes and training and playing. And so the IQ and the brains and how to play rugby was sort of inducted early. And then I think it even then got that step further when I first went to the Brumbies, and you had like Stephen Larkham and Rod Kafer and Pat Howard and David Giffen and thinkers of the game.
Why'd you go to the Brumbies?
Well, hang on, let's be careful here, because JP described it as the Brumbies got all the discards that couldn't make New South Wales.
Misfits and rejects.
Yes, pretty much.
100%. That's why we were so angry. Like, that's why we hated everyone and won. Because we used to call it the cappuccino set, right? Like,
and we lived on that a little bit. Like I sort of, when rugby became professional, it was like I was an electrician. So I was up in roofs and climbing, and I thought, here's an opportunity to do what you love and play. I'd had 2 years at the Waratahs with Greg Smith as the coach. I'd played 6 or 7 caps, and 6 of them were off the bench. Michael Bryle, Willie O, Tim Gavin was sort of the mainstay back rowers. And Rod McQueen rang and said, there's an opportunity to come down to the Brumbies. You would be our leading number 6, but I can't guarantee your position. Come down and prove yourself and get a start and all that sort of stuff. So I took up that opportunity. At that stage, I think Greg Smith got promoted to the Wallabies, and Chris Hawkins, the Gordons coach, came in, and he came back and said, because he'd been coaching me in the Waratahs B team, and said, we want you to come to the Waratahs. So then there was just a few conversations, and it was moved from being an electrician to a professional rugby player. I actually took 6 months leave without pay from my job because I didn't know whether Super Rugby would keep going at that stage. So, the opportunity to go down to Canberra and start a fresh and new team. And for me, it was more, I'd had 2 years of behind world-class players, and I knew that they were that. And here was an opportunity to go somewhere new and sort of, not prove yourself, but you've got first dibs at a spot. go down there and train professionally. So it was a big learning for everyone. It was like when you talk about becoming a professional sports person, in those first couple of years, the professional sports person was a bit loose. It was like there was a good mixture of professional and amateurism.
And it was a golden era as well, like pretty much straight away. Like you guys were the first Australian team to win in South Africa, weren't you?
No, it was our first win. And it took us 4 years to win until we went to neutral referees.
Was it 2001?
No, it's 2000.
2000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2000. So 96, 97, 98, 99.
So
we
fifth
lost.
year. So the fifth year of
the
going
fifth
there.
year going there until we got neutral referees. And I think it was Paul Honus was the New Zealand referee at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually finally won a game. And we had it was a big celebration, actually.
Yeah, that's all I care about hearing about it. That's what
look, a few
happened.
boys.
We were in Cape Town.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Then we were heading to
Yes.
Pretoria.
Cape Town and Lamed. And and then we had the infamous Cape Town 5. I actually jumped in the cab before these guys, but there were 5. Like that was big in Australia, wasn't it? Like, because this is pre-social media, pre-internet, really, and it was just the front page of the paper. I remember, like, Bill Young was one of them, and I remember his father grabbed like 20 copies of the Daily Telegraph, the paper here. My son made it, and it's like a picture of him in a jail cell. Like, it's like not quite like it was. It was a mock-up. It was a mock-up.
Yeah.
But it just went crazy over here.
I know why we've moved to this story, because I was one of the 5. Thanks for the lead in on South African conversations. This bit wasn't planned at all. I love a podcast that just naturally flows into stitching blokes up.
We're pros.
I have been dying to tell the story.
Yeah.
Because I roomed with Bill.
From your perspective, what happened?
So it was a little bit funny. Like because a meter was ripped out of the cab. But when you think about a meter in a cab here in Sydney, it's in the dashboard. This bloke got a meter from between his legs and stuck it on a piece of Velcro, and it had a taxi bill in South Africa, which was like 250 Rand, which is ridiculous. Like, it should have cost 40 or 50. So we were complaining about whether we should pay it or not. And he pulled up at what we thought was a derelict building. Yeah. And fortunate for myself, I'd had probably a bit too much to drink and didn't get out of the taxi. And
you were asleep in the back.
No, I don't think I was asleep. But Bill Young was holding my hand because he'd had enough. But we were just mucking around then. So I think looking at the 5, I can name them all. Rod Cafer was sitting in the front, so he got the meter out and put it up on the wall, and that was what was vindicated as wrecking, pulling the meter out of the cab.
Oh, okay.
It was
someone left the handbrake off. Someone pushed it. Someone jumped on the roof, which was probably not the greatest idea. But after celebrating for 2 days, your first win, and I've done stuff that's more stupid than that, obviously. But so then when we woke up the next morning, like, the cab driver was blowing up, but it worked out that we were outside a police station. So the derelict building was not a police station. They had CCTV and they saw what we were doing.
It's like they were just in a dark alleyway,
but we went straight into crisis resolution. So we went to the ATM and grabbed some money, and we gave it to the cab driver, gave him his fare, gave him some money because he said that we wrecked one of the mirrors that was obviously been broken for 15 years prior. But anyway, and I think what happened was we gave the money to the police, and I'm not sure whether that money was all passed on. So I got asked to come back and tell my story to South African police inquiry, but I wasn't keen on doing that. I didn't know whether it would be a safe trip to South Africa. But anyway, so we sorted it all out. We all went to bed, and it wasn't until the next morning we woke up and Phil Thompson, our manager, was ringing us all going, come down to this room. And we were like, as we were walking down the lift, I saw Bill and Joe, and I was like, oh. Like, he didn't tell us what happened. He just rang our phone in the room and said, come down, we need to have a chat. Anyway, so we sort of worked out that it was pretty. So in South Africa for us, it wasn't major, but what was happening in Australia,
it was huge,
was big. David Campese had come out as good ex-Wallabies and teammates do, and said that we should all have our contracts ripped up and terminated. And, we were on the front page. Someone had broken into Buckingham Palace and got into the Queen's room, and that was on page 2. So that's how important what we did at Cape Town was.
It was crazy, mate.
And I said to our media bloke, Annie, you say any news is good news. He was like, this is not good news. So anyway, we jump on the bus to Pretoria, and there's all these signs. We met with placards. Yeah. Brumbies, please behave. And they're shaking as we get off the bus in Pretoria. So it was, I think a couple of us got warnings and a couple exonerated, and one of us got a week's suspension. But
yeah, look, it was just one of the first ever scenarios that ever hit rugby union or even like any sort of sport where we were international and we had no control of like sort of media stuff. Like thankfully,
the story was pretty big, and
like they should have been in prison.
Talk show radio about what should happen to us and how we without having any. So the most that was given was I think a small monetary fine and a 1 week out of playing, and it was more to teach us a lesson of that sort of behaviour. And I think any person, you don't have to be, obviously when you're a rugby player, you're a higher profile, and there's this sort of understanding that. But for us, it was anything that could happen to any group of 5 blokes that went out at night.
Yeah, of course.
Probably had too much to drink, and 1 or 2 of you did something stupid, and someone fell off a bike, or unfortunately, these things have been happening to me for 50 years. No, probably not 50. I'm much more sensible in my new role. But it was just a bit of fun and games on the night. But when we woke up the next morning, we were.
It's an awful feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. It's actually when you got no control of what was saying, and we weren't.
And half of it's bullshit.
Yeah, we weren't like. You could just imagine that the headline of ripping a metre out of the cab and trying to steal it. So
damaging a cab.
Taking the handbrake off and pushing it 5 or 6 metres was us trying to steal the cab. Like it just, the story just blew out. Anyway, so I just feel sorry for Phil Thompson because it was like
he was the manager.
Managers at the time, they've just got to control that and try and get to the truth and then do something that makes everyone happy and that was his life for a decade. Well, still is. He's still the CEO of the Brumbies. So it's like,
oh, is he?
Yeah.
Was there any point where you guys had the opportunity to tell the story, or were you asked to tell the story?
I don't think they didn't want it. And it got to enough, you start then putting fuel on the fire, and it was like the funny thing was, like when at the time it was my girlfriend, but now my wife. Ringing her up and saying it wasn't much, and she's like, "Mate, I just turned up to work at school, and all the teachers are talking about you. I didn't see the newspaper, but everyone in the staff room is talking about how you're a disgrace." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So we're over in South Africa thinking this isn't too big, and all of a sudden I'm going, "Oh shit, this is big." Like it was a lot bigger than we thought where we were in our own little bubble of.
And that was that also that really, Andrew Merton said it on the pod last year about that amateur to professionalism, where the amateur players definitely noticed a big change in how the social side of things, all the off-field.
So imagine those kangaroo courts. Your idea was to punish people for minor indiscretions during the week by making them drink skull beers and then send them out into
the community.
And then tell them to behave themselves. So lots of that doesn't happen now, or they'll go and have a few quiet beers. But that was the
norm.
That was the norm. That was the cultural norm for a game of footy, and we were doing it at the Brumbies and Wallabies level, but people were doing it back playing club footy, go out and have a few beers, and
Something can be said though, although like there's this professional environment that obviously puts athletes in the best positions to be athletes. Something can be said for having beers and letting your hair down when it comes to a rugby environment, though, right?
Yeah, like definitely. I think the balance is really important, and like as much as like when we look back at that World Cup team that won, like performance was important, but having that mateship is, and so lots of professional teams talk about their culture and how they build their culture. And, we used to have this thing where we come together and we build, and, it was about, enjoying each other's company. And I said that at the start. That's why I think we had a massive advantage down in Canberra, because outside rugby, we spent so much time with each other, and it wasn't always talking rugby, but there was a lot of conversations. You'd sit round a coffee shop and someone would be squiggling something and go, "What do you think of this move?" And mostly you'd say, "Yeah, that's good." If it was JP, you go, "Mate, no way."
Pass the ball.
Yeah.
Actually, that when I got contracted at the end of '97, Brett Robinson, who was the captain, because Eddie Jones was a development tour, met with Brett Robinson, and the first thing he said to me was, "You fit really well in the team and with everyone. Not about how you play or the talent you have. It's actually you fit really well in the team and you get along with the guys really well." So that was actually their first motivator to sign somebody. It was never really about the
And
talent.
Robbo was big on work-life balance, and
It's to call it the level.
Yeah.
If you get on the level, like you on field is good. If you're off field is good.
And I was definitely that. Like, I knew how to walk, muck around and be a nuisance and niggle people. But
He was a pest.
Yes, I was.
He was a pest.
I was
You
a
must have
renowned
some memories of that, Marshall.
Oh, yes.
a renowned pest. But when I walked across the line, even at training or whatever, then it was time to switch on. Like it was always, people would say to me, "You get anxious before a test match," and I was like, "No, never." And because I wouldn't really think too much about it. And then when you cross the line, you're like, "Oh, wow, now it's on." And
I was going to ask you about that, because 1996 you debuted for the Wallabies against Wales, right? That's very early in your professional career. And straight away you're going in at number 6. And it's like one of those positions where you've got to be physically, you've got to be an animal. And you were an animal, like you were pretty
But I think at that stage I'd played 2 years at Colts. I'd played like 24, 25 second grade games for Randwick, and then first grade games.
We're talking about a test match.
So but I left school at 17 and then had 2 years at Colts. So 19, then I was going grade. So like 4 or 5 years in grade footy in Randwick's enough to toughen you up and give you like a bit of a, and then I had a couple of years, in that under 21s program, New South Wales 19s, New South Wales under 21s, a couple of years in the Waratahs, and that used to be what JP was saying. So that was like full-time work, go do your own weights on a Monday, and 3 days a week we'd either have to drive to North Sydney Oval or Concord at 6:30 at night to accommodate everyone who worked till whatever time, and 9:30 or 10 o'clock you'd be leaving there going, bug it. So there'd been a fair bit behind. I don't think it was sort of just then, but my point of difference. And actually, I saw this is how bad it is. I saw something on Instagram from Joe Smith. He got asked, John Smith, actually, who was the hardest 2 tackles you've ever, who's the person who tackled you the hardest. He named me, but he said he also threw in he's the most unathletic rugby player that I know. I was like, how unkind. You can't compliment one hand, bag on the other. Yeah. Unathletic, but I smashed you. So the point of difference, like I knew, still not that athletic, but and especially when I was playing internationals against, a Michael Jones or a Tane Randall or these blokes were athletic. Yeah. So I needed to be a mongrel, and I think that was my sort of mantle that I took, like uncompromising, rip in, get in people's face, niggle, and it sort of, and it worked out for me. So it's, something that I sort of took to heart then when I was, so it was always, it was like, so when I was at the Wallabies, at one stage they did that well-being thing where you had to mark between 1 and 5 how you were feeling. So every morning I used to go in the physio room and look at that and see who wasn't feeling well, and they were the people that I targeted. So
I was going to say, you go pick on them.
You pick on them to try and lift up their spirits. But looking at it now, the work health and safety, I'd probably be sent like a letter saying you're bullying the wrong people. But it was not bullying, but it's more just...
It was 100% bullying. No, that's what it was. It was like, but it wasn't done in a fun, like, there's no fun bullying. But the environment in a footy team, like you needed that.
You need the balance.
Yeah, you need your personalities, right?
I knew that I wasn't pushing people over the edge.
Yeah.
But I was happy to GM up. And
what about like with the Brumbies and the success? Like 2000, Sterling Mortlock lost us the final. 3 from 8, I think it was. Like, I keep saying that to Sterling. I think I contributed to
which
that.
game's that? Is that
2000 at home.
Crusaders?
Yeah, when we lost the final.
We lost that one. Penalty goal at the end. Was that the one?
Yeah. We had 75% of the ball that day.
Yeah. We also didn't have a plan B as well. Like, we just ran everything. Like, we never really kicked it. And that's what probably let us down in that final as well. I
didn't realise Sterlo was played so badly.
No, he didn't. I muck around. He kicked 3 from 8. Mate, he kicked one from 25 metres just left of the post. And he hit one post, hit the other post, hit the crossbar and bounced back out. Like, it just wasn't our day. But 201, you didn't play in that final. No. Like, you got sensationally suspended. What was your defence at your tribunal case?
Well, that's the difference between sort of modes of game. I was old school, so I need a bit of an example. Michael Foley had the ball on his chest like this, and I went to ruck the ball and accidentally grazed the top of his face. But at the same time that my foot made contact, George Smith was pilfering the ball. So when we went to the judiciary and they slow-mo it, now your foot's near his face, where's the ball? I'm like,
well, it was
there 3 frames ago, and you're going 0.0 a second. Anyway, I got a yellow card in the game, and we beat the Queensland Reds to make the final, but I got suspended for 4 weeks post that.
I heard your defence was like, you kicked him in the head, but they were rubber. They were rubber soles. They weren't
rubber soles.
They were moldies. You had moldies.
No, I didn't have moldeds.
Oh, you had steel.
No real rugby player wears.
I don't see you as a mold wearing.
How can you push in a scrum if you I'm from the Ewan McKenzie school of scrummaging as a back rower. That's why I've got one cauliflower here, not the other. No, but it was like, so that was like a fine. You just take your medicine and whatever. So it was really disappointing to miss that one. And then obviously in 2004, and that was like, as well as a sore knee, a sore shoulder. So I don't think I did a lot of contact training during the week. 2003, I missed the Rugby World Cup, which was disappointing.
Tell us about that, mate. Like, you didn't get sensationally picked for that.
Yeah, that happened a couple of times,
with Eddie.
Sensationally. Yeah, it was sort of disappointing because myself, Toto Kefu was injured for that World Cup, and then we sort of got replaced by, he would have been replaced by John Rowe, number 8 for Queensland, and David Croft came into the team. But David Croft being a 7 and George Smith and Phil Waugh were already in the squad. So for me, it was like, I remember saying to George Gregan the next day, he said, did you get your phone call from, and he was the captain of the team, did you get your phone call from Eddie? And I went, yeah, I'm not in the squad. He was like, yeah, bullshit, and walked the other way. And I was like, no, mate, I'm not. And he was, okay. But, Eddie rang me that day and I just didn't really want to talk. So I hung up and I rang him the next day and said, just want to get some feedback. And he sort of moved it on to Ewan McKenzie, and I got my feedback or whatever and got on with it. So 2004 was a sort of big campaign for me, and we won the Super Rugby. But that was my, when you get those knockbacks, you want to actually prove what's happening. So between like a shoulder injury that year and then I got back into the Wallaby squad, and it was sort of just the sort of writing was on the wall. I had trained with the Brumbies and had managed sort of a shoulder, and every time I trained at the Wallabies, you had to do everything with Eddie full boil, and I'd spend like an hour and a half at physio that night just trying to get movement in my arm again. And after about a month of doing that, I went and saw the doctor and said, this is no good. So
you weren't able to manage it while you're in the Wallabies?
Yeah, not that. Like, Eddie just wanted, and you can, why if you have people at training at the Brumbies, they could see value in being part of that squad to play every weekend. Yeah. But at the Wallabies, it's also, a bit of Eddie's style. You've got to be in there and ready to rip in and do everything, which is fine if that's his mantle as a coach, but I wasn't. So sort of at that stage then, I sort of, the writing was on the wall, and I sort of looked overseas. So I ended up in Newcastle, Dublin and Leicester for 3 years and left after the 2005 Super Rugby.
What about the lamb chop you had that you got stuck down your throat?
Dodgy Canterbury lamb chop.
Come on, mate.
202 when we
He's got a memory, hasn't he?
When we played you guys. Oh, no, I remember this because Norm Maxwell cheap-shotted me from behind and I thought I broke my ankle. I got stretchered off in a ambulance to hospital, morphine, the whole lot.
Nothing was
exactly. They came back and said, there's no broken ankle. I heard a big crack. Anyway, after we just lost in the last minute, I think, in that game, and Owen, like after-match function.
Wasn't even the after-match function. It was in the change room afterwards. They came in with these tray of lamb chops and I started eating one or two of them or 3 or 4 of them. Not that that's the point. But there was like a slither of bone in the chunk of meat.
Oh no!
And it got stuck in my throat. So literally 3 hours later, we're back at the hotel, and I'm saying to the doctor, "There's something in my throat." But he's saying, "Just eat a bit of bread, and that'll dislodge it." And like 4 hours later, I'm still like literally after 10 minutes, I'd have to go over and vomit because it was all piling up. I had to go under full anaesthetic. And woke up the next morning. I'm having a drink of water and I go, vomit it all out. It's still there. Well, they put me under full anaesthetic to clear it. And then it's still there. So then I go back in, like they can't give me another anaesthetic. So I got sedated and they put like a camera down my throat. And I've actually got a photo of it at home where the bone stuck across like 40 centimetres down my esophagus, the bone lodged. And they've pushed it out with a camera. But the worst thing was because it was an Easter long weekend, if I didn't get on that flight with the team, I think we played on a Friday night, Saturday afternoon, I couldn't get a flight till Tuesday or Wednesday the next week because it was an Easter long weekend and we were playing the Waratahs that next week. So they took me out of hospital, the doctor and physio, fully sedated, and they're walking me through the terminal. And when I get back, some of the Brumbies supporters have complained about how pissed I was at the doctor and the physio. It's a disgrace. Like, I was like, give me their name because I want to ring them up and take them through what I've been through. But it ended up when I had a bit like knee that I was talking about. So when I was shaving it to strap it up, I ended up nicking myself and I got an infection from the grass. So that week I spent 4 days. Got to Sydney. I spent 4 days in the hospital and got out the day before and literally couldn't play against the Waratahs because I'd been in literally dying on a drip for 4 or 5 days.
Oh my!
In hot sweats and whatever, and tried to warm up and whatever. I couldn't do it. So
one of your best years, your Australian Rugby Player of the Year, 2001. Hell of a year to be Player of the Year. The Lions are in town. Tell me about that because it was the first test you guys line up in Brisbane. You go down to the line. JP, you were in that game, weren't you?
Yeah, and knee got snapped though. Martin Johnson twisted me.
That must be a thing with you and Locks, mate.
Yeah, no. Well, those were the days you couldn't do the twist tackle, right? What is it?
The neck roll.
The neck roll. Yeah. That's what happened. My foot got stuck in the ground and ACL snapped.
And that was the end of your tour?
That was the end of the Lions. Yeah, it was like I only just finally got the start back too. And then I had to start again, but
it was pretty it was an amazing. So I had a little bit of an inkling on what those Lions were like. So I come from an Irish background, an Irish family. So I'm the only one in my family who was born of my siblings that were born in Australia. So mum and dad are both Irish. Mum's got 14 brothers and sisters. Dad's got 13 brothers and sisters.
What?
Yeah.
Over 100 first cousins.
Yeah.
So I knew how many of those cousins were coming out and
for
what
tickets.
Because they were all asking for tickets.
See, whereas you'd be sweating just thinking about it.
So I knew how important it was for Irish, English, whatever. And I think everyone else. So I'm hoping the current Australian team get an idea because they come over here and they have a really good preparation pre the tournament and lots of lead-in games and they get some of their combinations going. So pre that tournament, we went straight from Super Rugby into playing first test. We didn't have a game. You come out there and I remember being at the Gabba. It's when Brian O'Driscoll made this amazing break and scored a try and my family were all telling me on the train on the way home and they were singing Waltzing O'Driscoll because he waltzed through our defence. But when we arrived there, it was like we were in Cardiff. Like literally you, as an Australian, you walk out in the ground, you just look around, you go, oh shit, like there's just red jumpers everywhere, and they support the team so well. And so as a player, the atmosphere was amazing. Like fast forward 12 years in 2013, then when you go and watch and whatever, and you're there the Wednesday or Thursday before a test match, the whole city is inundated with supporters.
Yeah.
The banter and the atmosphere is unreal. There's lunches and events and all that sort of stuff you like. So I'm looking forward to that again this year. But the opportunity to sort of play in that was amazing, and we just got totally out-muscled and outplayed in the first game, but we were able to, with Rod McQueen and John Eales as our sort of captain, spin that around in 7 days turnaround. Like we were not in the game in the first one, and then able to win the second one. It was sort of close, and even in the third one, I think come. One of the games. Was it the second game where Roffey took it in a set?
Second game, Roffey took it. And
so at Melbourne, we were
won the third one.
Melbourne, you won 35-14.
Goog single-handed.
The hand of God.
Won the series.
The hand of God.
Let's not give him any more mic time on that.
Yeah.
Like he lives off that.
He does. And I always say to him, mate, you played one of 3 games. You can't win a series.
I'm claiming it.
Yeah.
Like I played 1 of 3.
Yeah, the one we lost.
Mate, run straight. yeah.
Obviously, our scrum and set piece got better.
Still in the squad.
Yeah, exactly.
Still in the squad.
Exactly.
And then the decider, you're going to Sydney, 84,000, a decider against the Lions.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like you look at those crowds, and I talk about watching the Haka, and like I've got amazing memories of. I remember the first time, like my mum told me that I wasn't allowed to do it. I was singing and I stopped singing so I could listen to the crowd and how engaged they are and what they're in. But the camera went past me then, and I wasn't singing. And my mum said, so then from then on, I had to sort of sing until I saw the camera went past, and then I could stop and listen. And you got folks used to have the Haka, and then we'd do a massive rendition of Waltzing Matilda, and it'd scare all the All Blacks that were around. So we'd start the game on an even footing, but it was a wonderful atmosphere in those early years after the 2000 Olympics. I think we played a test match in front of 116,000 against the All Blacks.
That was massive.
So just those sort of being part of those things and being able to sort of before the game started always stop to take in and appreciate those. When you're singing your national anthem, the hairs are on the back of your neck, and to be able to stop and then just watch the crowd and listen to it and see it in, and that was sort of my way of exciting myself for the game that was coming up, and then watch the Haka and sort of stare at your opposite man, and then the whistle goes and you're ready to rip in. So I think the Lions will be amazing again, the tour, and so they are. Like you only get it, the fact that you get it once every 12 years, and you share it between New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia. So our sort of boys are sort of heading in the right direction. I think Joe Smith's done an amazing job, and and they should be competitive.
Where do you think the Wallabies may have an advantage over the Lions? Because obviously the Lions coming down here pretty confident. There's a lot of...
I think they always do. I don't know. It's they've got such a selection to pick from. It's the Lions come together, and it's an amazing squad. Hopefully there's some continuity in what Joe's doing. In the halves, I don't think we've had a lot of continuity in the past. Like even the last 12 months, there's been 3 or 4 halfbacks that have had runs. I think now he's sort of definitely put his chips on Noah Alisi, and he's been getting stronger every game, and so it needs sort of him to take care. You look at any of those tournaments, any of those World Cups, you talk about teams that win. I look at our 1999, and you'd probably be able to say the same when the All Blacks have won. You've got a really strong 9-10 that just lead your team around the park. And so, I mean, if we want to be competitive, it's, and I don't know, I couldn't even tell you whether it's going to be Tate McDermott or Nick White or at the moment Lonergan's playing for the Brumbies or
Jake
Gordon, or so what that mix looks like and who Jake's sees is best. But that's probably the most important selection for me leading into the Lions on how we're going to go, is what that 9-10 combination look like and how they perform. The tight 5, it's always a challenge playing the Lions against their set piece and and normally, historically, Australia have probably had the wood on them in the back line. But, watching the way Ireland play and their skill set and skill level, and I think a majority of the squad will come from Ireland. England have sort of bounced back. Scotland's playing well. So, it's only really, Wales that I wonder whether any of them will make it.
I think it's the same, though. Like the Lions 9-10, right? Like you've got the Scottish 10.
Finn Russell, yeah.
You've got
Russell.
Marcus Smith, the English 10, and then you got this new kid, the Irish 10, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, again, it's going to come down to that 9-10 and which 9 are they going to choose as well. So, I think everyone's going to be very interested in that.
God, yeah.
Those two combinations.
I think the Anzacs is a nice little intro.
Oh, that's awesome,
I
isn't
like
it?
the Adelaide Oval. I haven't played an Adelaide Oval, but I've been down there to watch. It's another great venue and something for the Lions tourists to get in and around Adelaide. So, it's an exciting little period. This needs to go well, as I said, for Rugby Australia, and then the next World Cup, and there's Olympics 2032. So for a long time we've been talking about a decade of opportunities, and there's lots of stuff happening in the women's game as well, a World Cup, and another sevens tournament.
Yeah, I think 2029 we got the women's Rugby World Cup here too.
So there's a bit going for the game to build on, and it's sort of, you get more news when you're winning games and consistently performance. So for me, it's what I've seen is an improvement in consistency of performance with Joe Smith, but there's going to be another change there leading into the World Cup. So it's like, how do you keep that momentum going and the challenge? So
I just wanted to ask you just quickly, because I know we want to move on, but man, you guys got a lot of change out of that little ball between you and Gregs, didn't you? Fuck,
we've got plenty.
Hey,
But
where was that? Where did that come from? Because, like, you basically came from the blind side of the ruck, really, didn't you?
Yeah, or just sitting in behind,
and like for 2-3 years with the Wallabies, with the Brumbies, just opened up defences with regularity.
Yeah.
And we had to actually start training with, especially, well, not just the super teams, with the All Blacks. And we obviously called it the Gregan ball.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously going at that, he's picking on a prop.
The
which
second
you tend to do.
defender.
That's it.
You
normally wait until there's someone that's...
But man, you guys got some change out of that move.
Yeah, we got
honestly.
plenty. I was actually, one, for a while before Scott Higginbottom played a few more games than me, I was a leading try scorer in Super Rugby.
As a forward, 28, 29.
29 tries. So I was
Did you get 29 tries?
And I think I played 93 games, so it was like a 1 in 3. A few hat tricks. And
Who said you're not an athlete?
yeah, but it's like I said,
Every
one of those tries is like a 3-metre canter. Once I did it from 25 metres out, but it was almost like that. I only called it if you saw the right person defending there. And who was bent over and a little bit tired. And the other key to make that work is you need people to want to bash George Gregan, and everyone did. If you're a prop and you see Gregs and you see him running, you're like, oh, here's my chance. I'm going to belt him. And like the amount of times that he threw the pass and I'd trundle over and score the try and look back and he was like high-fiving, but you watch it like later in the week and you're like, oh, wow, you got bashed there. That was the best thing. Like he ran, and if it was telegraphed, I'd probably get bashed. So we did a bit of work on it, and it was more around the defensive frailties of who was defending there at 1 and 2, and that one defender chasing the 9 because they wanted to bash George. So that came into it. But it was like funny because when I wrapped up the Brumbies and they showed you your highlight package, I was like, that's a shit try. That's a shit try. That's a shit try. And then you see a good one where, crossfield kicks and chip and chases and all that. So I was like, that's a good one. Stop showing those ones. Where you just get a little flick pass. But I imagine with the 29 tries, probably 15, more than half would have been
off that ball.
A little ball from George.
S-ball, as they call it.
What did it? Yeah, okay.
People listening to this or watching this will be wondering what you're doing now. You're working for the Kids Cancer Project Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so sort of, after coaching at the Brumbies and doing a bit, it was time to get a real job. So I'd had sort of 16 years in professional sports, and it's funny, I had a facility management business down in Canberra, and I went to work for that for 5 or 6 weeks, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. And we had a recruitment agency down in that sponsored the Brumbies, Kowalski Recruitment, and I had a meeting with them and said, this is my skill set. what do you think I should do? And took me through, when you go for your first job interview and you're they want leadership and they want innovation and they want this. And I'm like, I haven't done any of that. And then she was like, yes, you have. You've done this and that. And so taught me through how you'd actually sell yourself for a job. And my first job out of sort of rugby was running a rescue helicopter that was based in Canberra in southern New South Wales. So I had 4 years there. And then when I moved to Sydney so the kids could go to high school, moved back to closer to family after, probably 17 or 18 years in Canberra. And I got an opportunity to be the CEO at the Kids Cancer Project. So it's an amazing charity that was started by tourist coach driver who was driving past a children's hospital here in Sydney, saw 2 ball kids cross the road, decided to go in and see what was wrong with them, raise funds to take them on trips to the zoo or the circus, to the fire station, to the mounted police. Had been to over 75 funerals, and one of the oncologists said to him, if you want to make a difference, invest in childhood cancer research. So since 2005, we've committed $75 million to childhood cancer research.
Wow.
And I started a decade ago, and I think that number was between 25 and 30. So raising awareness of the statistics around childhood cancer. 3 kids are diagnosed every day. 3 kids in Australia are passing away every week. And then trying to find money to support research that'll find kinder treatments, better better survival rates. So when our charity started, the survival rates was probably in its 50s. Now it's in 86%.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So our vision is obviously 100%, but seeing kids not only survive but thrive. So, and had a few little, David Giffen, when both our children were 2, David's son Joseph was diagnosed with neuroblastoma stage 4 and given 35% chance of survival. Like it was probably 12 or 18 months ago, he sent me a photo of himself and Joe having a beer for his 21st.
How good.
And then, 12 or 18 months ago, I went to a funeral for my 6-year-old next door neighbour who my daughter had been babysitting for the last 3 or 4 years that had passed away from a brain tumour. So, for me to have some sort of impact and influence in that space and see more kids having 21st and less funerals, that's sort of my mantra with the Kids Cancer Project. So it's about raising awareness and engagement and so some of our funding, for the New Zealand listeners would be supporting kids in New Zealand as well. So we fund clinical trials through ANZCHOG, which is the Australian-New Zealand Childhood Haematology and Oncology Group, so the national body. And quite often when they get funding for funding clinical trials here in Australia, the Australian government won't give them money to fund the New Zealand component, so we'll fund that so kids in New Zealand can get access to new clinical trials and new drugs. So it's something that's amazing. It's like next month in April, I'll be celebrating 10 years as the CEO of the Kids Cancer Project.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so it's just been an amazing journey, and being able to sort of use my profile to sort of grow support of that, but also to raise awareness of some of those statistics and really make a difference.
I don't think anyone listening to this will not want to try and help in any other way, like in any way that they can. So, like, how would someone go about contributing?
I think the best way is to Google the Kids Cancer Project. So that's the name of it, the Kids Cancer Project. So if you Google that, it'll show you where our website is. You can go online to learn more about our projects and what we're funding and how we're funding it. And it'll take a team to get these sort of results, and it does. It's a bit of so there's 1,000 kids in Australia that are diagnosed every year, and you can imagine with the population, you just do the sums on what's happening in New Zealand, but you need an international collaboration to have the sort of clinical trials for those sort of numbers. So a bit of it's an international focus as well.
Owen, thank you very much for coming on the show. A legend on the field, an absolute hero off it. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Great to come in here with 2 of the people that I loved playing with and against.
Love you too, big guy.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for watching or listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're on at the moment, and we'll be back again next week.